Hey, this is going to be a Raw review for the 18th of May. What a terrible, terrible mess this was. Okay, some of you will be familiar with the term to jump the shark, right? It's an entertainment term which stems from an episode of Happy Days in which the Fonz, alias Arthur Fonzarelli, alias E, actually physically did jump over a shark on water skis. And that moment and that phrase have come to represent a moment in a TV show in which they do something in order to gain audience ratings or just, make the audience care. Do something so ridiculous, so ludicrous that it just undermines everything the show's been about up till that point. It just totally washes away all the good any show has done in the past. And basically it shows that the show is dying, as Happy Days was at this point. To say that this episode of Raw jumped the shark would be a great understatement. You could probably replace the phrase "to jump the shark" with the rather less elegant phrase "to book a match between Vicky Guerrero and Santina Marella over the title of Miss WrestleMania, which contains two separate run-ins, one from Ooh Chavo and the other randomly from William Regal. This was just ridiculous. In terms of content, right, this episode of Raw was funnier than the last two. The wrestling was better than the last two, but there was something about just the overall feel of the show that seemed to exemplify more the reasons why Raw is bad right now. Basically, it's just a joke. It's just a massive, horrible, unfunny joke. It's not a wrestling show. Michael Cole spends the whole episode just pissing himself. When JR gets on commentary, he's clearly so angry at what Raw has become in his absence that he can just barely speak about it. Anyway, we'll start. Michael Cole introduces the show. He says Judgment Day was controversial, astonishing, and miraculous. We watched different pay-per-views because I found it okay, bland, inoffensive, right? Randy Orton comes out. They play up the idea that he couldn't beat Batista at Judgment Day, which I knew they would, leading to an inevitable rematch. And they also mentioned the shock return of Ric Flair. How is that a shock return? He was on WWE TV like 6 weeks ago, okay? He was at WrestleMania. This is really recent history. This is not a shock. Orton comes out. He points out he's still the champion. He says that's not enough for him, though. He didn't just want to retain his title, he wanted to take Batista out in the process for good, and he says he was denied that by Ric Flair. He then starts rewriting history by suggesting that Flair didn't actually like him during their Evolution days. There was never any evidence of that on TV, but, whatever. He then starts talking about how he's destroyed every member of Evolution at some point, and how Flair stopping the beatdown of Batista at Judgment Day was just prolonging the inevitable because Legacy would eventually take out Batista for good, and Flair shouldn't interfere in his business again, which rather predictably is greeted with a woo, and Ric Flair's return to Raw, dramatic return after 6 weeks absence. Flair comes out, basically says, you can't beat Batista. He plays on his most famous saying, to be the man, you've got to beat the man, by saying, until you beat the man, you are nothing, to Orton. He says that Orton was supposed to be the young star in Evolution, but Batista eclipsed him, and then he starts intimating that he can't beat Batista, basically. Orton gets annoyed at the idea that he can't beat Batista. He says he is the man, he can beat Batista anytime, any place. Flair says, it's funny you should say that because I saw Vicky Guerrero backstage and she's furious that her main event at Judgment Day went to a no decision, and therefore she wants a match which can't end in disqualification, which can't end in count out, which can't end in interference, and therefore, under Flair's suggestion, she's booked a cage match at Extreme Rules between Batista and Randy Orton. At which point Orton attacks Flair, Legacy come out, Batista comes out, Flair and Batista are getting beat down, then John Cena shows up, and that's that. Okay, Then we have Josh Matthews do a little interview with Cena. Basically, why did he run out? He says he ran out. Basically, they're just setting up for the pay-per-view after Extreme Rules, when Orton clearly retains the title, by saying that Cena, regardless of who's champion, Cena's going to get that title back soon enough. Then we have the Divas Battle Royal for a number one contender shot at the Divas Championship between the smart, sexy, and powerful women of the WWE. We get the usual Michael Cole asking the King if he's been masturbating over photos of divas, and the King going, yeah, I love doing that. This is a rubbish match. First of all, the rules are rubbish. The fact that Divas Battle Royals, you just have to go through the ropes. You don't have to go over the top rope. Everyone knows the rules are go over the top rope. Just do that. It's much better. So we get some rubbish eliminations. Maurice is on commentary. She does quite a good job of being an arrogant heel. She says Mickie James isn't sexy enough. She's not diva material, and there's nothing glamorous about the Glamazon, which is kind of true. And towards the end of the match, there are three left. There's Beth Phoenix, Mickie James, and Kelly Kelly. Rather unpredictably, Kelly Kelly wins the match. She drop kicks Beth Phoenix out of the ring, and then Mickie James gets sprayed in the face by perfume or something by Maurice, and Kelly Kelly just kicks her out of the ring, and she's the number one contender for the Divas Championship. I don't like her chances. Then we have Santino Marella versus Chavo Guerrero. This is a feud between lower mid-carders. This is the sort of thing you would used to see on Sunday Night Heat, and this is really, really bad. Like, Chavo Guerrero's quite good in the ring. Santino Marella is absolutely awful. I mean, he's great on the mic, so fair enough, but he's just awful in the ring. For some reason, they're playing up this sort of storyline that Chavo Guerrero is a massive favourite in a match against Santino Marella. Santino Marella is just like a huge underdog, even though they're both jobbers, right? How could Chavo Guerrero be much better than Santino? Anyway, Santino picks up the surprise victory with a jackknife cover after getting dominated throughout the match. And after the match, Chavo ludicrously, for no reason, says, well, tell your sister she'll be in action tonight against my aunt, Vicky Guerrero, for the title of Miss WrestleMania. Then we have Maurice backstage. For no reason, she's speaking to herself in French. I know she speaks French, that's fine, but why is she just talking to herself? Anyway, then the Miz shows up, hits on her, she rejects him, but I hope they keep going with this and that Maurice and the Miz eventually become a couple, because I think they'd be a good on-screen couple. Then we had Matt Hardy being interviewed by Josh Matthews, who intimates that he may have gained his US title shot against MVP tonight due to his interference in the Jeff Hardy match, and that he may have been hired by Vicky Guerrero and Edge to interfere in that match, so Jeff Hardy didn't win the title and Edge retained the title. Matt Hardy says that's nonsense. He says whenever he looks at his cast, he remembers all the things Jeff's done to him, and the reason he interfered at Judgment Day was simply because Jeff doesn't deserve the title, and he deserves the adulation. Then we had Chavo and Vicky. Vicky, of course, logically was going, why did you do this, Chavo? That was a totally stupid decision. Why didn't you just book him in a match against the Big Show or something? And then Orton comes in, and he's also furious at Vicky Guerrero for making this match. She says, I'm the boss. He disagrees. Then we have the Colognes versus the Brian Kendrick and Goldust. I quite like this storyline. At the start of the match, they start talking about how Goldust has been very active of late, which basically they were talking about his run-in on the Big Show during Superstars, and I was like, yeah, he's been pretty active. You just put him in every random storyline you can think of. So yeah, now he's part of the Brian Kendrick storyline. Anyway, I'll talk about this in part 2.